Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I arrived home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise my wife, Karen. She's a sales assistant at a local electronics store, and we usually get home around the same time. As a policeman, my shifts can be unpredictable, but today I managed to wrap things up early. Unlocking the front door, I heard muffled voices coming from the living room. Karen wasn't expecting me. She usually watches her favorite shows after work. I walked quietly, thinking about how to surprise her, maybe suggest an impromptu dinner date. But as I stepped into the living room, I saw that. She was on the couch, tangled in an embrace with another man. A sharp pain shot through my chest as I recognized him. Eddie, her coworker. He had been to our house a few times for social gatherings. I had never suspected anything between them. Karen's eyes widened in shock when she saw me. She pushed Eddie away and stood up quickly, her face pale. "Bruce, what are you doing home so early?" she stammered. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Everyone, stay where you are," I said calmly. I pulled a chair from the dining table and sat down, facing them. "Karen, how long has this been going on?" I asked. Karen blinked, clearly taken aback by my reaction. "Bruce, I never meant for this to happen. It just did." "How long?" I repeated, my voice steady. "A few months," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started as just talking, but then it became more." "You thought I didn't notice all this time?" I asked, a hint of surprise in my voice. Karen looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion. "You knew." "Of course I knew, Karen," I said, shaking my head slightly. "You think I wouldn't notice the changes, the late nights, the distant look in your eyes." Eddie shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to leave. "Bruce, man, I should probably go." "Stay," I said firmly, locking eyes with him. "You're a guest in my house after all." Karen looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Bruce, I'm so sorry. I love you. Can we just try to fix this?" I sighed. "I don't know for now." Turning to Eddie, I added, "You can leave now. Thanks for staying." Eddie nodded quickly, practically running out the door. Karen stood there, looking lost and broken. "I'm going for a walk," I said, heading towards the door. "We'll talk later." As I stepped outside, I heard Karen sobbing quietly behind me. It was already getting dark. The cool evening air helped clear my mind as I walked towards the local park. They sold delicious hot dogs there, and I figured some comfort food might help. I bought one and started walking, eating the hot dog as I pondered what to do next. Karen's voice echoed in my head. "Can you handle this?" I had responded that I didn't know, but the truth was I wasn't going to forgive her. I was a man of honor, and I didn't want to crush her hopes outright. Yet deep down, I knew the betrayal had cut too deep. As I savored the hot dog, I realized it tasted far better than any dinner Karen could have made that night. The simple pleasure of a well-made hot dog brought a small, unexpected joy. It made me think about how I needed a break, a reset. I had been a valiant worker, and during my service, I had earned a couple of weeks of vacation. By the time I finished the hot dog, I had made up my mind. The very next day, I would go to the police station and take that vacation. I didn't know yet what I would do during this time, but I needed to get away from the turmoil at home. After finishing my hot dog, I walked around the park, the calmness of the surroundings helping me clear my thoughts. I continued to the city center, wandering aimlessly, letting my mind wander. By the time I returned home, it was already dark. To my surprise, Karen was already asleep. I had expected her to be up waiting for me, eager to talk, but the house was silent. Quietly, I made my way to the guest room. I woke up the next morning still in my clothes from the night before. I had been so drained that I didn't even bother to undress. When I made my way to the kitchen, Karen was already there, waiting for me with a delicious breakfast spread out on the table. She had made all my favorites: bacon, eggs, pancakes, and fresh coffee. Normally, my stomach would have growled at the sight, but today it felt like a cruel joke. "Bruce, I made you breakfast," she said softly, hope in her eyes. I just waved it off, feeling a surge of irritation. "This is so banal, Karen." My stomach was my Achilles heel. I love to eat, but today I couldn't bring myself to enjoy her attempt at reconciliation. Instead, I made myself some instant coffee and ate 4 store-bought waffles, leaving her breakfast untouched. Karen watched me, clearly wanting to talk, but I couldn't do it. "What can we talk about here?" I said, not meeting her eyes. "I don't see the point." She opened her mouth to respond, but then thought better of it. I left the kitchen and got ready for the day, my mind focused on what I needed to do next. Arriving at the station, I headed straight to the boss's office. Chief Reynolds and I had always been on good terms, thanks to my hard work and dedication. He looked up from his paperwork and smiled when he saw me. "Bruce, what brings you here so early?" "I need to take a couple of weeks off. Chief, it's urgent." His smile faded as he studied my face. "Everything okay at home?" "Not really," I admitted. "I just need some time to sort things out." "I see, you've earned it, Bruce. Take the time you need." "Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it." He signed off on the vacation request without hesitation, and I left his office feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. Leaving the station, I finally knew what I was going to do. My parents lived too far away for a quick trip, and meeting with friends wouldn't help. I wanted to be alone, away from the city. I remembered the 2-story house in the neighboring county that had belonged to my grandfather. Karen and I had inherited it when he passed away, but we hadn't visited much. The last time I was there, the house was in poor condition. Grandfather hadn't been able to clean it properly in his later years. I didn't remember exactly how bad it was, so I decided to go there first to assess the situation. I needed to see what kind of work it would take to restore it. I packed a few essentials, got into my car, and set off. The drive was peaceful, and the farther I got from the city, the lighter I felt. As I approached the county line, the landscape became more rural, with open fields and scattered forests. About halfway there, as I rounded a bend in the road, I saw a car pulled over on the shoulder. A woman was standing next to it, waving her arms frantically. I slowed down and pulled over, rolling down my window. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Thank God you stopped," she said, looking relieved. "My car broke down, and my phone's dead. Can you help me?" I hesitated for a moment, glancing at the car. It looked like it had seen better days. "I have a tow rope. Let's get your car to the nearest service station," I offered. She introduced herself as Lisa. After securing her car to mine with the tow rope, we slowly made our way to the nearest town. During the drive, she told me she was on her way to visit family, but had gotten lost and ended up on this back road. "Thank you so much for stopping," she said. "I don't know what I would have done otherwise." "No problem," I replied. "Everyone needs a little help now and then." We reached the nearest service station, and I helped her get her car situated. When I finally arrived, the place looked even more rundown than I remembered. The paint was peeling, and the yard was overgrown with weeds, but it had a certain charm, a sense of history and memories. I got out of the car and walked around, assessing the state of the place. The front porch creaked under my weight, and the windows were dusty, but it felt like it had potential. Having figured out what materials I needed, I drove to the nearest town. After loading up the car, I made my way back to my city to pick up the lawnmower and some other tools I'd need for the job. When I got home, Karen was gone, probably at work. I didn't really care what she was doing, whether she was with Eddie again or not. Anyway, I grabbed the lawnmower and drove back. The lawn was a mess, overgrown with weeds and tall grass. I spent the entire day mowing and cleaning up the yard. I wanted at least the bedroom to be in a livable state for the night. As I worked, I ate semi-finished products and store-bought food to keep me going. By the time the sun started to set, I had made some decent progress. The house was on the outskirts of the city, but the dense thickets surrounding it on three sides made it feel like I was deep in the forest. It was quiet, almost eerily so, but it was exactly what I needed. I cleaned out the bedroom, set up a makeshift bed, and sat down. The room wasn't perfect, but it was a start. In the evening, his wife will call Bruce and ask where he is. He will only answer that he is resting in a quiet place. I still wanted to say something, but he hung up. She called several more times, but he didn't pick her up. That evening, my phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I saw Karen's name flash on the screen. Sighing, I answered, "Hello. Bruce, where are you?" Her voice was tinged with worry. "I'm resting in a quiet place," I replied curtly. "Can we at least talk about this?" she asked, but I hung up before she could say more. She called several more times, but I ignored them. The next morning, I loaded up the car with more materials and headed into town. As I was buying some additional supplies, I spotted Lisa. She saw me too and waved, making her way over. "Hey Bruce, how are you doing?" she asked with a warm smile. "I'm doing okay. Lisa, just picking up some more stuff for the house," I replied. "Great to see you. Listen, I wanted to thank you again for helping me with my car. Can I buy you a coffee?" "My treat," she offered. I hesitated for a moment but then agreed. "Sure, that sounds nice." We found a small cafe nearby and grabbed a table outside. Lisa ordered us both coffees and a couple of pastries. "So, how are you settling in?" she asked. "It's a work in progress," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "I'm trying to fix up my grandfather's old house. It's in pretty rough shape, but it's a project." She nodded. "Sounds like a lot of work. I admire your dedication. It's keeping me busy, that's for sure. What about you? How are things going with your car?" "All fixed now, thanks to you," she said, smiling. "I came to visit my relatives in the city, and I'm staying with them for a bit. It's nice to be around family." We talked for a while, sharing more about our lives. I found it surprisingly easy to open up to her about what I was going through. "I'd love to see this house of yours," Lisa said eventually. I chuckled. "There's not much to see yet. It's a bit of a disaster zone right now, but once it's in better shape, I'd be happy to show you around." "Sounds like a plan," she said, smiling. "I'm looking forward to it." The house still needed a lot of work. I spent the rest of the day repairing the porch and clearing out more of the clutter inside. As evening fell, I sat on the newly repaired porch looking out at the overgrown yard. It was quiet, just the sound of crickets and the rustling of leaves. Sitting on the porch that evening, I gazed out at the yard. The stars were starting to appear, and the quiet was a welcome change. Just as I was beginning to unwind, my phone rang again. It was Karen. "Hello," I answered. "Bruce, where are you? Why aren't you coming back?" Her voice was filled with frustration. "I'm just resting in a quiet place," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "You're ignoring everything. Are we getting a divorce or not? You haven't said anything about our future," she pressed. I leaned back in my chair, looking up at the stars. "Why rush in such a hurry? I didn't forbid you from meeting anyone or even spending time with Eddie or whoever else. Don't you dare consider me unworthy," she snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "I didn't say that, Karen," I replied calmly. There was a brief silence. Then she spoke again, her voice softer but still tense. "Bruce, this isn't fair. You can't just disappear and ignore everything." "Fair?" I said, a hint of amusement in my voice. "You brought a strange man into our house, Karen. How dare you? I never meant for things to get this bad," she cried. "Well, they did," I said, my tone still calm. "Stop mocking me," she pleaded. And then I heard the click as she hung up on me. I put the phone down and rubbed my temples. The next morning, I loaded up the car with more materials and headed back into town. As I was picking up supplies at the hardware store, I noticed Lisa again. She seemed to be browsing the same aisle, and I couldn't help but smile. "Hey, Lisa, are you following me?" I asked with a playful grin. She laughed and shook her head. No, my cousin works here, so I thought I'd drop by and say hi." "Well, it's good to see you again," I said, genuinely pleased. "Same here. You want to grab a coffee again?" she suggested. "No, seriously, you're probably following me around to offer me coffee again, but why not?" I replied, appreciating the chance to relax a bit. We walked over to the same cafe and found a table outside. This time, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. We both seemed to be at ease, enjoying each other's company. As we talked, I noticed Lisa giving me subtle signs of interest. A lingering touch on my arm, a playful smile. I found myself responding in kind, leaning in a bit closer, holding eye contact a bit longer. "You're really dedicated to this house project," she remarked, sipping her coffee. "It's keeping me busy," I admitted, "and it's something I need right now." Lisa nodded, understanding. It's nice to have a project. It keeps the mind occupied. We spent a long time there, talking about everything and nothing. It felt good to just relax and connect with someone who wasn't part of the turmoil back home. Eventually, I glanced at my watch and realized how much time had passed. "Damn, I spent so much time here with you. I haven't gotten anything done at the house," I said, half joking. She laughed. "Sorry for distracting you." "No, it's a good distraction," I assured her. "But seriously, if we're going to keep spending time together, how about you come help me with the house next time? It'd be nice to have some company while I work." Lisa looked at me, amused. "You want me to help with the renovations? Why not? It could be fun. And I could use an extra pair of hands," I said, smiling. She considered it for a moment, then said, "All right, you've got a deal. I came here to visit my relatives and take a break from work, so I'm on a sort of vacation too. Helping out could be interesting." "Great," I said, genuinely looking forward to it. We finished our coffee and parted ways, both of us smiling. Back at the house, I dove into the work with renewed vigor. The place was starting to shape up little by little. I cleared out more of the debris and started painting the walls in the living room. The next day dawned bright and early, but as I stepped outside to start my day, I noticed something strange. A car parked at the edge of my property. I hadn't seen it before, and it made me curious. I walked over to the car cautiously, looking around. It was an older model, dark blue, and the windows were tinted. As I approached, I noticed the driver's side window was down. Inside, a man was slumped over the steering wheel. My instincts as a policeman kicked in, and I quickened my pace, my heart pounding. "Hey, are you okay?" I called out, but there was no response. I reached the car and gently shook the man's shoulder. He stirred and looked up at me with bleary eyes. "Help me," he croaked. "Hang on," I said, pulling out my phone to call 911. As I dialed, I noticed he had a deep gash on his arm, and he was bleeding badly. "I've got you. Help is on the way." After I hung up, I grabbed a clean rag from my car and pressed it against his wound to slow the bleeding. "What happened to you?" He winced but managed to speak. "There was an accident. Someone hit me and drove off." I glanced around, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of another vehicle or skid marks on the road. "Can you tell me anything about the car that hit you?" "It was a black SUV," he mumbled, his voice weakening. "Didn't get the plate." The paramedics arrived and took over, loading the man onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. One of the paramedics approached me. "Do you know him?" I shook my head. "No, I found him here just now. He said he was in a hit and run." "Thanks for your help. We'll take it from here." I decided to head into town to inform the local police about what had happened. It felt strange being on the other side of things, reporting an incident rather than investigating it myself. At the police station, I spoke with Officer Davis, who listened intently as I recounted the events. "We'll look into it," he assured me, Thanks for letting us know, Bruce. We'll keep you updated. The encounter had brought back memories of my time on the force, which made my current situation with Karen and the house seem distant, almost trivial. On the way back, I stopped by a diner to grab a quick bite. As I sat at the counter, sipping my coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the hit and run than met the eye. The man's fear seemed genuine, but there was something off about the whole situation. I decided to take a detour on my way back to the house, driving along the road where I had found the car. About a mile from where I had found the man, I spotted skid marks on the road and broken glass scattered near the ditch. I pulled over and got out to take a closer look. The glass was fresh, glinting in the sunlight, and there were pieces of a taillight among the shards. As I examined the scene, my phone rang. It was Officer Davis. "Bruce, we ran the plates on the car you reported. It was reported stolen a week ago," he said. "Stolen," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. "We're looking into it, but I thought you should know. Stay safe out there." "Thanks, Davis. Keep me posted." I hung up and stared at the scene before me. A stolen car, a hit and run, and a man left for dead on my property. Something didn't add up. I took a few photos of the scene with my phone before heading back to the house. I reached out to a few old contacts from my days on the force. After a few calls, I managed to get in touch with Detective Ramirez, an old friend who still worked in the city. I explained the situation to him, and he agreed to meet me for coffee later that morning. At the cafe, Ramirez greeted me with a firm handshake. "Good to see you, Bruce. So, what's this about a hit and run?" I recounted the events, describing the man I found, the stolen car, and the scene of the accident. "Something about it doesn't sit right with me," I concluded. Ramirez nodded, his expression serious. "We've had a few reports of similar incidents. Cars being stolen, then used in what seemed like random accidents. It's possible they're connected." "What do you think is going on?" I asked, leaning in. "Could be a number of things: insurance fraud, gang activity, or something else entirely. We're still piecing it together, but I'll look into the details of the car you found and see if it matches any of our cases." "Thanks, Ramirez. I appreciate it," I said, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. After our meeting, I headed back to the house, my mind buzzing with possibilities. I focused on the renovations for the rest of the day, tackling the plumbing issues and starting to paint the living room. The work was demanding but provided a much-needed distraction. By the time evening rolled around, I had made significant progress. As I took a break on the porch, enjoying the cool night air, my phone was ringing. It was a message from Ramirez. "Got some info. Car matches a vehicle involved in a robbery a few days ago. Might be more to this than just a hit and run. Be careful." I read the message, a chill running down my spine. "Looks like things are getting more complicated," I muttered to myself. The next day, I decided to take a closer look at the area around where I found the man. I spent the morning combing through the ditch and surrounding woods and saw a lot of people. I found a few more pieces of broken glass and what looked like a discarded wallet, but nothing conclusive. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye on a nearby tree. Carved into the bark was a strange symbol, something that looked like a cross between a star and a triangle. I took a photo of it, intending to show Ramirez later. "This is getting weirder by the minute," I said, shaking my head. I drove back to the house and continued working on the renovations, but my mind kept drifting back to the hit and run. Who was the man I had helped? And why had he been left for dead in a stolen car? The next day, I started by reaching out to some old contacts in the police force, hoping to gather more information. The situation with Karen and the house would have to wait. There was a mystery to solve, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. That evening, Ramirez called me. "Bruce, that symbol you found, it's been showing up at other crime scenes. We're definitely looking at something bigger here. What do you need from me?" I asked, ready to dive in deeper. "Keep your eyes open and stay safe. I'll be in touch with more info as we get it." After hanging up, I felt a mix of excitement and unease. This was turning into something far more complex than I had anticipated. Over the next few days, I focused intensely on the investigation, driven by a need to solve this puzzle. One evening, Ramirez called me again. "Bruce, we got a break in the case. The symbol you found is linked to a local gang known for staging accidents and robberies. They've been under investigation for a while." "Do we have any idea where they're operating from?" I asked. "We have a lead on a warehouse on the outskirts of the house. We're planning a raid tomorrow morning. I thought you might want to be there," he said. "I'll be there," I replied, feeling a rush of anticipation. The next morning, I joined Ramirez and a team of officers at the designated location. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside, but we knew better. We moved in carefully, weapons drawn, and quickly secured the area. Inside, we found the stolen vehicles and a cache of goods from various robberies. It was clear we had stumbled upon their main operations hub. As we secured the scene, I spotted the man I had found in the car. He was sitting in a corner, handcuffed, guarded by 2 officers. I approached him. "Remember me?" I asked. He looked up, his face a mix of fear and recognition. "Yeah, I remember. You saved my life." "Why were you left for dead?" I asked, wanting to understand his role in all of this. "I was trying to get out," he said. "I wanted to leave the gang. But they don't take kindly to deserters. They set me up to look like an accident, hoping I wouldn't survive." "Well, you're lucky you did," I replied. "And now you're going to help us take them down." With his cooperation, we were able to piece together the rest of the gang's operations. The gang was dismantled, and their reign of staged accidents and robberies came to an end. With the case closed, I could finally turn my attention back to the house and my own life. The days following the resolution of the hit-and-run case saw me returning my focus to the house. The mystery had been solved, but my life was still in need of repair. I found solace in the physical labor, restoring my grandfather's old house piece by piece. Lisa had agreed to help, and her company was a welcome distraction from my troubled thoughts. One afternoon, Lisa arrived with a toolbox in hand, ready to tackle another day of renovations. We worked side by side, painting walls, fixing the porch, and making plans for future improvements. Usually, Lisa left early to get back to her relatives, but today she seemed in no rush to leave. As the sun began to set, I was busy in the kitchen, installing new cabinet handles. Lisa was in the living room, painting the last section of the wall. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was well past the time she usually left. I finished my task and headed upstairs to the bedroom, thinking about calling it a day. When I entered the bedroom, Lisa followed me up. I turned to her, surprised. "Hey, why are you still here? It's pretty late." She smiled a bit shyly. "I just felt really good being around you today. Listening to your stories about the investigation made me realize how much I enjoy your company." There was a moment of silence as her words hung in the air. She stepped closer and suggested almost in a whisper, "Maybe we could stay together tonight." I hesitated for a moment, thinking about the implications, but the isolation and the connection we shared over the past few days made the decision easier. "Yeah, let's do that," I agreed. We were alone in the house with no one around to intrude. The bed, which had seemed so uncomfortable when I slept there alone, felt surprisingly more welcoming with Lisa by my side. Afterward, we lay in bed, wrapped in each other's arms, the night enveloping us in a blanket of peace. Lisa broke the silence first. "I have a boyfriend," she admitted softly. "He cheated on me. I guess I just wanted to feel something different." I felt a pang of surprise and a bit of indignation. "So you did this just for revenge?" She shook her head, her eyes sincere. "No, Bruce, it's not just about revenge. I like you. You make me feel safe and valued, something I haven't felt in a long time." I sighed, feeling the mixture of emotions. "My wife cheated on me too," I began. "That's why I'm here, trying to piece my life back together. Lisa reached out and touched my face gently. I see. Anyway, I'm glad we're here now. We talked for a while longer, sharing our stories and finding common ground in our experiences of betrayal and hurt. Despite the circumstances that brought us together, there was a genuine connection between us that felt comforting. Early in the morning, Lisa got up to leave. She dressed quietly, not wanting to wake me, but I stirred and watched her prepare to go. "Will I see you again?" I asked. She smiled and leaned down to kiss me softly. "Of course, I'll be back to help with the house and for you." In the company of Lisa, the renovation of the house progressed swiftly and efficiently. Her presence brought a newfound energy to the project, and together, we tackled tasks that would have taken me much longer on my own. The house was starting to transform from a neglected relic into a welcoming home. We painted, fixed plumbing, replaced windows, and even managed to restore the old wooden floors. As we worked, our relationship deepened. The days were filled with labor and laughter, while the nights were spent in each other's arms sharing stories and dreams. It was a comforting routine, but I knew it was temporary. One evening, as we lay in bed, Lisa turned to me with a serious expression. "In a week, I'll have to go back to my place," she said quietly. "I've got work and responsibilities waiting for me." I nodded, feeling a pang of sadness. "I know. I've got 6 days of vacation left. I guess we'll have to make the most of them." We spent the next few days putting the finishing touches on the house. We installed new light fixtures, hung curtains, and added some personal touches that made the place feel more like home. The transformation was remarkable, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction seeing it all come together. On one of those days, we decided to take a break from working on the house. We packed a picnic and drove to a nearby lake. It was a beautiful, secluded spot, perfect for relaxing and enjoying each other's company. We spent the day swimming, lounging in the sun, and talking about our future plans. As we sat by the water, Lisa looked at me thoughtfully. "What are you going to do after I leave, Bruce?" I sighed, staring out at the shimmering lake. "I'm not entirely sure. This house was supposed to be my escape, my project to focus on, but now that it's almost done, I need to figure out what's next." Lisa nodded, understanding. "It's important to have a plan, something to look forward to." "I know," I said. "I think I'll stay here for a while. Get used to the new place, maybe even invite some old friends over. And I'll definitely have to sort things out with Karen. We need to have that conversation about our future." Lisa reached out and squeezed my hand. "You'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think." We spent the rest of the day enjoying the peacefulness of the lake, savoring the moments together. As the sun set, we packed up and headed back to the house, both of us knowing that our time together was running out. Over the next few days, we continued to work on the house. But there was a sense of urgency, a desire to make the most of the remaining time. We cooked meals together, watched old movies, and talked late into the night. It was bittersweet knowing that this chapter was coming to an end. On the last day of my vacation, Lisa and I sat on the porch, looking out at the yard. The house was finally complete, and it looked beautiful. "You did an amazing job," Lisa said, smiling at me. "We did," I corrected her. "I couldn't have done it without you." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm going to miss this place, and you." "I'll miss you too," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "But we'll stay in touch, and who knows, maybe we'll see each other again soon." That night, we shared a tender moment, knowing it would be our last time together for a while. As we lay in bed afterward, Lisa admitted, "I really needed this, Bruce, not just the project, but you." "You helped me too," I replied, holding her close. Early the next morning, Lisa packed her things, and we said our goodbyes. She kissed me softly and whispered, "Take care of yourself, Bruce." "You too, Lisa," I said, watching as she drove away. The final task on my list for the house was to install surveillance cameras and set up a security system. Given everything that had happened recently, I wanted to make sure the place was secure, especially since I would be far away for extended periods. I spent the morning mounting the cameras around the property, covering all the entrances and key areas. Once the hardware was in place, I signed a contract with a reputable security service. They assured me that in the event of a threat, they would respond immediately to protect the house. With the security measures in place, I felt a sense of closure. The house was finally complete and secure. It was time to return home and face whatever awaited me there. The drive back was a mix of anticipation and trepidation. I had spent weeks away, and I wasn't sure what to expect upon my return. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed that Karen's car was parked outside. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation we needed to have. As I walked into the house, the first thing that struck me was the silence. It was unusually quiet, almost eerie. I called out, "Karen, I'm home." There was no immediate response. I walked through the house, my footsteps echoing off the walls. When I reached the living room, I found Karen sitting on the couch, looking anxious. Next to her was a man in a suit holding a briefcase. Karen's eyes were red, and it was clear she had been crying. "Bruce, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I looked at the man beside her, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "What's going on?" The man stood up and extended his hand. "Mr. Reynolds, my name is Stephen Turner. I'm a lawyer representing your wife." I shook his hand, confused and apprehensive. "All right, what's this about?" Karen took a deep breath, clutching a folder in her hands. "Bruce, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I'm pregnant." I stood there stunned. "Pregnant?" I echoed, my mind racing. "How far along are you?" I asked. "About 2 months," she replied quietly. I did the math quickly in my head. This meant she got pregnant around the time everything started falling apart between us. "Is it mine?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. Karen's face fell, and she looked down at her hands. "I don't know," she admitted. "It could be yours, or it could be Eddie's." The room seemed to spin around me. I took a step back, trying to process the information. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I was scared," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know how to handle it. And then everything with Eddie happened, and I didn't know what to do." Stephen Turner cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. "Mr. Reynolds, Karen has decided to keep the baby, and we need to discuss the next steps, including the possibility of a paternity test and how to move forward." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling overwhelmed. "All right," I said finally, "we'll figure this out." We sat down at the dining table, and Stephen began outlining the legal aspects we needed to consider. He explained the process for establishing paternity and the potential implications for custody and support. It was a lot to take in, but I listened carefully, knowing that this was now my reality. After Stephen left, Karen and I were alone in the house. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation hanging heavily between us. Finally, Karen spoke. "Bruce, I know I've made a lot of mistakes, and I understand if you can't forgive me. But I want to do what's best for this baby." "As you say," I answered. I also wanted to make some kind of joke similar to the ones I made the last time I spoke to her on the phone, but I refrained. A week later, the results of the paternity test were in. I had prepared myself for a range of outcomes, but nothing could have fully readied me for what I was about to discover. Karen and I sat in the doctor's office, waiting for the verdict. Eddie had also voluntarily provided a sample, and now the truth was about to come out. The doctor walked in holding a folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds," he began, his tone serious. "I have the results here. Bruce, you are not the father of the baby, and neither is Eddie." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I turned to look at Karen, who seemed equally shocked. "Who is it then?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Karen's face went pale. "I don't know," she stammered. There was no one else. I swear, Bruce. I stood up abruptly, trying to control the flood of emotions. I got it, Karen. Damn you. We left the office in silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on us. As we drove home, Karen tried to break the tension. "You've grown such an attractive beard," she said, her voice almost admiring. "All this time on vacation, you haven't shaved." I glanced at her, my contempt barely contained. "And you turn out to be even more of a person than I thought." I spat, unable to hold back any longer. My God, if I tell my colleagues at the station about who I got married to, they will laugh at me. Karen's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't say anything else for the rest of the drive. We both knew there was nothing left to say. When we finally arrived home, the silence was deafening. We stood in the living room, both of us lost in our thoughts. The house felt cold, devoid of the warmth and hope we had once shared. "What do we do now?" Karen asked quietly, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "You want to keep the baby, right?" Karen nodded, wiping her tears away. "I want to keep the baby, Bruce, no matter what." I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of responsibility. "I understand, but we need to establish some boundaries. I need time to process all of this." We spent the next few days in a tense silence, avoiding each other as much as possible. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the chaos at home. One day, Karen entered the room, her eyes red from crying. "Bruce, can we talk?" I looked up, nodding slowly. "Yeah, we need to," she said, sitting down across from me, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry for everything. I know I've hurt you deeply, but I want to make things right. I want to be a good mother, and I want to fix our relationship." I sighed, running a hand through my beard. "Say no more." "I know," she said softly, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "I love you, Bruce. Despite everything, I still love you," I replied. Hearing "I love you" from someone like you is a humiliation of my manhood. Months passed, and despite our best efforts, Karen and I couldn't come to an agreement about the child. We tried mediation, long discussions, and even involved family therapists, but we simply couldn't find common ground. To cope, I buried myself in work. My days were filled with endless tasks and responsibilities, which helped me escape the chaos at home. But the real solace came from my conversations with Lisa. She was my lifeline, a breath of fresh air in the midst of the turmoil. Every day, I would find a moment to call her. We talked about everything and nothing: her job, my cases, the progress on the house, and the little moments that made life bearable. Lisa's voice was a constant reminder that there was still kindness and understanding in the world. One evening, as I was on the phone with Lisa, Karen walked into the room. I glanced at her briefly, then continued my conversation, laughing at something Lisa had said. Karen watched silently, her expression unreadable. She had seen how much these calls meant to me, how they lightened my mood and brought a rare smile to my face. I hung up the phone. Karen stood there, her eyes filled with a sadness that cut me deeply. "You really care about her, don't you?" she asked quietly. "She's been a good friend," I replied, not wanting to add to the already painful situation. Karen nodded, looking away. "I see how you talk to her, how you treat her." "Karen, it's not about replacing you," I said, trying to find the right words. "Lisa is just someone who understands what I'm going through, someone who hasn't hurt me." I lied to her big time and told her we were just friends. I'd really like to leave her because the father is the one who conceived the child, not the one who raised it anyway, I continued. "I suppose so, at least. I haven't told Karen that yet, but I intend to. What do you think? Can I do this? Can I just leave her and go to Lisa?" The last time we spoke, she said that she was looking forward to me at home. And although I have no idea what will happen with the divorce and who will have custody of the child, I definitely don't intend to tolerate this situation in my life. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.